Hello and good day. Welcome to our video channel, God's Promises. And today's video will be Psalm chapter 83. Let's get started now. Psalm 83 is a prayer for God's intervention in a time of national crisis. It is believed to have been written during a time of war and political turmoil in Israel's history. The psalmist calls upon God to defend his people against their enemies and to vindicate his name. The psalm begins with the psalmist addressing God, asking him not to remain silent in the face of their enemies. The psalmist recognizes that their enemies are conspiring against God and his people, seeking to destroy them. The psalmist prays for God to act, to rise up and defend his people as he has done in the past. The psalmist then lists the nations that are arrayed against Israel, calling upon God to defeat them. The nations mentioned include Edom, Moab, Ammon, Jebel, Tyre, Assyria, and others. These nations were known enemies of Israel and had a history of attacking and oppressing the people of God. The psalmist also prays for God to deal with the leaders of these nations, who have led their people into war against Israel. He asks that they be humiliated and destroyed, that they may know that God alone is the Lord. The psalm ends with a plea for God to act quickly, before the enemies of Israel can gain the upper hand. The psalmist expresses confidence that God will act, that he will defend his people and vindicate his name. The application of this psalm for believers today is to trust in God's power and protection in times of crisis. Just as the psalmist called upon God to defend his people in a time of war, we can call upon him to defend us in times of spiritual warfare. We can trust in his power to defeat our enemies and to vindicate his name. Furthermore, this psalm teaches us to pray for our enemies. While the psalmist prays for God to defeat his enemies, he also recognizes that God desires for all people to be saved. We can follow this example by praying for our enemies, even as we ask God to defend us against them. We can pray that they will come to know God's love and mercy, and that they will turn away from their wicked ways. Finally, this psalm reminds us that God is in control of all things. The psalmist recognizes that the nations may be powerful and intimidating, but ultimately they are subject to God's authority. We too can take comfort in knowing that God is sovereign over all things, and that nothing can happen without his permission. We can trust in his goodness and wisdom, even in the midst of trials and tribulations. Thank you for visiting us today. Please share with us your favorite Bible verse below in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help our channel grow. Looking forward to see you back here for our next video. Always take good care.